What's up, Anchor listeners for the Common Sense Show TV? What's going on, man? Listen, real quick, I just want to ask you a question. Have any of you ever thought about starting your own podcast? When I was trying to start this podcast, get it off the ground, I've been on Anchor for a couple of years now. I had a lot of questions about it. How do I record an episode? How do I get my podcast on Apple Music and Spotify and Google and all that good stuff? And how do I make money from it? So the answer to every one of those questions that I asked myself was simply this particular platform at anchor.fm. Now, Anchor, you can do everything here, one stop for recording, hosting, and distributing all of your podcasts because you don't have to really go through a middleman. It's all done right here on Anchor. Best of all, it's 100% free, you guys, and ridiculously easy to use. And now Anchor is going to match you with great sponsors so you can get paid to podcast. So eventually, I'm going to get paid to do this. I tell you. Now, I use Anchor simply because I broadcast the Common Sense Show TV right here on Anchor, and I distribute that through Apple, iTunes, Spotify, Google, Castbox, Radio Public, right here on the internet. So if you guys want to start a podcast, make money doing it, go to anchor.fm/start. To join me and other podcasters on Anchor and this diverse community of podcasters already using this particular platform. That's anchor.fm/start. I can't wait to hear your podcast. Good morning and welcome to the Common Sense Show TV episode 11's podcast. What's going on? Today is January 28th, 2019. We're going to get into it. Today, we're going to start the series, The Knucklehead Chronicles. The Knucklehead Chronicles is a book I'm going to write here, but I'm going to do it right here on the podcast first so you guys can kind of catch up and see what I am talking about. So make sure that you hang on tight, grab a seat, strap in. We're right back. All right. Good morning and welcome to the Common Sense Show TV podcast episode 11. Today is January 28th, 2019. Before I go any further, I want to do a memory today. Those of you who are old enough to remember that today, 33 years ago, the Space Shuttle Challenger exploded in space after 73 seconds after liftoff. And so I always pay homage to those that we've lost. I mean, I always remember 9/11. I always remember the attack on Pearl Harbor. I always remember the Space Shuttle Challenger. And so today I recognize and I want to remember those that we lost on January 28th, 1986. Man, some of you guys won't remember that, but I'm 43, so I totally remember. I was 10, but I totally remember watching that on TV because they had a teacher on board. Her name was Krista McAuliffe. If you guys don't know who she is, please go ahead and Google her. She was a teacher that won a teacher in space program and got to go on this particular space mission to them, and she was one of the ones that were lost in that explosion. So I want to give a moment of silence for those individuals. All right. So I hope you did that with me. You give them a moment of silence because we always want to remember those that we've lost for whatever reason. We always want to remember them. All right. So what I'm going to do today is I want to do a series. I'm going to do a series called The Knucklehead Chronicles. And the reason why I called it that is because that was a book that I'm supposed to write. And that's been the title of my book forever, and I haven't written it yet for a number of reasons. For one, I can't really write. I'm more a verbal guy than I am write down on paper. So if someone can dictate this for me, that'd be great. So what we're going to do, I'm going to do it in about 10 chapters over the next couple of days here, or the next 10 days. I'm going to do a chapter a day. And so hopefully that with every chapter, that it can help someone get past some get past certain things in their life and help them, because we have a generation of knuckleheads running around here and mistreating women and not paying for their kids and all this other good stuff here. So we're going to get into that, and so we're going to start with chapter 1. Now, chapter 1 starts April 3rd, 1975. I was basically 43 years old, you guys. Those of you who are mathematicians and can count. I'll be 45. You actually be 44 in April, of course. So April 3rd, 1975, I was born to a 14-year-old mother named Patricia. Miss her sorely, lost her in 2007. Not really knowing who my real biological father was. But always had a father in my life. Now, she married a wonderful man by the name of Walter, and they were married since I was a baby up until her passing in 2011. I was brought up in the church. I'm sorry, 2007. I was brought up in the church. That's all I know. But I do remember when I was younger that they weren't always that saved. It took a little while, but he finally got there, and we started going to church and all that good stuff. Now, I had a great childhood coming up. I mean, I wasn't, we were poor, of course. Not of course, but we were poor, and we didn't have all the things that the other kids had in my school, in my neighborhood even. We grew up in a trailer park. I used to go to my grandma's house, who I love and miss dearly, and I know she's going to kill me when I do call her tomorrow. She's going to kill me. So I haven't talked to her in like months, and so my childhood wasn't that bad. I mean, it was, if you think about it, with my father and him being in the church, he really didn't care for a lot of things that was earthly, as most religious folks would know, earthly. We couldn't play with board games that had dice. We couldn't, I'll tell you guys, I'm going to tell you guys a couple of stories here real quick of my childhood. I remember when I was 12. I think my brother was 8. We're 4 years apart. So I was 12. My brother was 8. His name is Rodney. He is, back in North Carolina. And I love him dearly. I do. So, I was 12 and my brother was 8. And I remember my mother going for Christmas one year. She bought us the board game Clue. And you guys know what Clue is. Clue was the mystery games where you had the cards and the little mini weapons and all that good stuff. And you had to figure out, who did it, where they did it, and, what weapon they used to do it. So my father caught wind of this, and he was very upset Christmas morning. I mean, we didn't have the game long, trust me. I think we had it for about a week, maybe. And so when my daddy found out that, that board game had a die in it, a pair of dice in there, he was so upset to the point where he took the Clue game, the whole game, not just the dice, the whole game, to the backyard where we live in the country so we can burn trash in our trash barrels. And he would go out, he took the game out there and he put it in the trash barrel and he burnt my game, to set it on fire. And I would never forget how mad I was at him. I said, man, I remember telling him at 12, I'm like, Dad, you take this a little too far, but I know some of you guys are laughing, but at the time I wasn't really laughing. I was pissed about it. So I remember, also another instance, we needed a vacuum cleaner. And my daddy, again, being religious and loving the Lord and all of that good stuff, my mother went to Walmart. Walmart was around back then. My mom went to Walmart and bought a vacuum cleaner. But of course, you guys know by now that the vacuum cleaner was a dirt devil. And so with that, just by having the name Devil in it, he took that vacuum cleaner, told my mother, put it back in the car. Hope you kept the receipt. It's going back. And we did not have a Dirt Devil. My mom took it back and got a Hoover. Oh God, just taking me back a little bit. Also, for those of you guys who are listening too, I am a humongous Duke Blue Devil fan. So those of you who don't know that, now you know. I am a Duke Blue Devil fan. I hate the Tar Heels. My favorite team is Duke, whoever plays Carolina. That's just because I'm from North Carolina. So again, I think at this point I was 16. I was 16 years old. Maybe 15. I had a job washing dishes at my local grocery store. And, I went my first check. I went down to, one of our clothing stores back home and bought me a corduroy Duke Blue Devil hat. It had the whole thing was corduroy, and you guys know what corduroy is, right? People don't wear corduroy no more, but corduroy is that old ripple fabric, and it had a zip in the back. So it was the days before snapbacks and fitteds. It was a zip in the back. You just and it kind of just zipped in the back to adjust. And so he caught wind of that Blue Devil hat and he got upset with me. And it got to the point where he said to me at one point that it's either that hat, either you got to go or that hat got to go. And I was like, I'm 15. So he was really very serious about that. And I, but looking on it later, in life, I thanked him for that, but we'll get into that in a later podcast. But he was so flipping religious. We didn't do Christmas. We didn't do, we didn't do Christmas. We didn't do Halloween. It was strictly, we're going to Bible study. We're going to church every night of the week. He's going to preach and we're going to love it. We're going to like it, And so, looking back on it, that was a rough time in my life, 15 and 16, and you want to go out with your friends and hang out and go to all the dances and the prom, which I didn't get to go to any of my proms. I never got to go to any of my dances, anything like that. So I don't know what that's like, even though I know how to dance and everything, but I never did get to go to a prom or anything. So it was rough. It was rough. So of course, at 15, 16, you start to rebel. And that's what I did. I started rebelling, and I was just like, I was the bane of his existence for a long time because I just caused so much drama because I wanted my mama to leave him because he was just too religious. He was too strict, too religious. And I was like, I don't want to be a part of this anymore. I want to just go. And that is kind of where my trouble started. Because I was so angry at my mother because she wouldn't leave him. Even though he didn't do anything wrong, anything like that. But, it was the fact, it was my own selfish. I want to be gone from here. He gets on my nerves and I can't do nothing. I can't, eat candy after 6 and all that good stuff. It was really crazy, right? My life was really crazy as a kid. And maybe some of you guys who are listening can kind of relate to what I'm saying, because when I was little, I wanted to be like the other kids. I wanted to dress like the other kids. And because of my upbringing and because we were poor, we didn't have it like that. So I had to improvise with my clothing. And so way back then, that was back in 85, 84, the clothing style is a little different versus what it is now. Right. So we used to wear dress shoes with, the name, Bugle Boy used to be a thing when I was young. Bugle Boy and Duckhead used to be a thing. But I think now it's, Lacoste or whoever it is now. But back in the day, it used to be Bugle Boy, Fila, British Knights, which is about a clan, but that's another story. But, and Nike, of course, has been in the game for a long time, but I wanted to be that. So we couldn't wear any of that stuff because we couldn't afford it. My brother and I, we couldn't afford it. My parents couldn't afford it for us. And so it was rough trying to fit in. Can you imagine being 16, 17 years old? Well, I go back as far as 14 years old, 15, 16, and you're wanting to fit into this crowd. And, and you want to be something in this crowd. And I gotta tell you, with these kids today, it's an absolute stigmata to some of these kids, because they want to fit in, they want to be a part of something, right? But back then, though, we really didn't have that whole, if you don't fit in, it's not as extreme now as it was. I mean, it's not as extreme then as it is now, but still, wanted to be a part of the in crowd, wanted to be one of the cool kids, and can never fit the mold. Why? First of all, you guys have ever seen me on video, I ain't that attractive, right? I'm not that attractive. I think, my fiance thinks I'm handsome. A lot of women think I'm handsome. A lot of people, my family think I'm handsome or whatever, but truth be told, I ain't that good looking. So back then, when I was in high school and junior high coming up, you had this set of, the cool kids. They were good looking. Their mom and daddy they were middle class, had a little bit of money, they wore the good clothes, and you wanted to fit into that. So my thing is, ever since I was little, ever since I was in school, I always figured that if I can make somebody laugh, that I can be part of the in crowd. Right. So that was my issue. That was my struggle. Struggles back then are nothing like they are today, but that was definitely my struggle when I was coming up, and it didn't help me, along the way, because I ended up, my grade slipped. I was a class clown. I made all kinds of mistakes, all that good stuff, but we'll get into that in a later podcast. And so I wanted to fit in. I felt like, and I found out, and this is kind of the most important part, and we'll get into chapter 2 tomorrow. This is chapter 1. First, I found out at the age of 17, that the man that raised me, because I didn't know this the whole time. I'm thinking that my brother's father and we shared the same daddy and the same mama. I always thought that till I was 17 years old. And then I found out that the man that raised me was not my biological dad. When I tell you, the pain of not feeling wanted came upon me so quick that it made my head spin. I was literally in my head, lost it. I thought I had an out of body experience when my mama told me that Walter wasn't my father. I thought I was going to lose it. So I can definitely relate to the children, to the kids that are right now in this world suffering because they don't know who they are. That thing is not new. That thing has been around since the beginning of time. I went through it. I had no idea who my dad was. I didn't know at that point in my life, 5 seconds after she said to me, "He is not your dad," I remember just losing all consciousness. I think the blood that was in my head rushed to my feet, and I couldn't even think straight. And instantly, I got upset. Instantly, I was pissed off at my mother. And so for many, many moons, I was mad at my mother. That's another podcast. And so in that particular case, in that instance, from that moment forward, I was upset. And everybody that came into contact with me felt the wrath of me being upset. Again, I can go back to what the kids nowadays are saying. I'm not wanted, so I'm going to act out. That's exactly what I did. That is exactly what I did. So we're going to get into that tomorrow in chapter 2 of the Knucklehead Chronicles. When I tell you guys, my life was good up until 16 or 17. And then it went absolutely haywire the day my mom found out, or the day my mama told me that Walter, the man that raised me for 17 years, wasn't my dad. That is traumatic. So anybody who's watching, not watching, listening, if you have gone through that, If you don't know who your father is, male or female, please understand that it's okay. It took me a long time to be okay, but I can promise you that you're going to be okay. The struggle was absolutely real because I didn't see him the same after that. I didn't see him the same. So my mother and my father they believed in whippings, belt and all that. It got to the point after that particular instance, after my mom told me he was my daddy, he couldn't whoop me no more. He couldn't discipline me no more. Those days were gone, but that's just how I felt. That's how I came up. And so that is chapter 1 of the Knucklehead Chronicles. Life from me got so crazy after that. This story, if you're listening, it's going to blow you away because I did some crazy stuff after that incident happened. So that's going to do it for this episode of the Common Sense Show TV. Make sure that you listen, subscribe to the podcast, follow the podcast. Follow me on Facebook at facebook.com/BullsFan40. Follow the Common Sense Show TV page on Facebook at facebook.com/the Common Sense Show TV page. I look forward to getting into this story with you guys. So that way you'll know exactly my story. So when you see or when you hear or when you see me on live, you're like, okay, that's a real brother right there. He told the absolute truth. That's him. I know him. I want my audience and my viewers, my followers to know me because it's nothing for me. It's absolutely crazy for me to sit here and try to give you guys advice or try to help you guys out with something when you don't know my story. Anybody that can't tell you that story is a complete falsehood. They should stop doing it. But we're going to get into all that. So you guys have a great and excellent Monday. I meant to say in the beginning, I hope you had a great weekend. We're back to the grind. Today is Monday, January 28th, 2019. You guys have a great rest of your day. Peace.